welcome to the Kryptonaut Podcast. I'm fucking miserable, and with me as always is...
Ditto.
And...
I'm rather chipper, to be honest.
All right, so two of us are miserable and you're chipper.
I feel pretty good.
All right, good.
Well, good. That makes one of us.
Yeah, that makes... Yeah.
Thanks for
That's all
listening.
right.
See you next week.
I'm going to carry the flag over the goalpost. That's not a good metaphor. That meant nothing. If we were playing
Flag
war
over the-
games,
Yeah.
no, it's still I can't save it. I'm
But-
still in a good mood.
Yeah,
We'll try.
Yeah, you're going to be in charge of bringing Chris and I through this.
I'll do
so.
my damnedest.
All right, well, thank you. So be sure to follow us on the social medias. We got the Facebook, we got the Twitters, we got the Instagrams.
I'm most excited about the Instagrams. It's very colorful.
The Instagrams are super fun. The Twitters are super fun, too.
I believe it. I just, I don't have access to these
And
things.
not that I have anything against the Facebooks, but it's just that, like, the steps I have to take to get to the page in the Facebook, like today, I'm like, I'm going to go check our Facebook page. And there was a video of, like, a 59-year-old baboon or something that was dying. And then, like, it met its friend.
On
and
our
it was,
page?
No. It's on our page. No, on the feed.
Oh, okay.
react to this.
That's horrible.
Fuck off.
Yeah, right to sadness.
Who's doing this?
I know.
When you log into Facebook, you gotta
It's
like
terrible.
you gotta go into like your feed real quick, and then I
Yeah.
have like a little game with myself where I'm like, I'm not gonna fucking react,
But
I'm
you
not-
do.
and I try to get to the thing, and then there's a video of that, and there was something else, and it was just a bunch of bummer bullshit, and then I got to our page and I was happy, but anyway. Facebook, like the page. It's always appreciated.
So enthusiastic.
Like I said, Twitters and Instagrams and all that type of stuff. So, we have some reviews to read real quick from our iTunes. So let's get started here from Smurf Bard.
Oh, I love that. The Shakespearean Smurf.
Smurf.
No.
S-M-U-R-P-H. Smurf Bard. I like that.
Wasn't there a minstrel Smurf?
Was there a
There
minstrel
was,
Smurf?
I think. Somebody was playing like a lute or some
That's what
shit.
I thought, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Slow and steady ride through the, I think it was paranormal, but this is cut off on my phone, so I can't read it. 5-star review.
Oh, the mystery continues.
So they go on to say, I only started listening recently, but so far I have been incredibly pleased with the format and content. Choosing to go in depth on lesser known cryptozoology is definitely a fun and interesting way of presenting the information. Additionally, the guys are just plain funny.
Well, thank you.
Sweet.
Well, we
Not
might,
this week,
we might not
fuckers,
be
but
we might not be funny this week.
The dream
we'll
is
see.
over.
I've already laughed far too much, and I don't like it.
I
So
know.
anyway, moving on.
let's cut that out.
Yeah, we're gonna cut out all of Chris's. I'm gonna cut all the laughs from Chris and I.
The edit it?
I'm gonna edit all the
So we'll have
laughter
a ton of fun,
Yeah.
but we just won't share it this time.
Yeah.
Okay,
We're going to
good.
insert demon noises in the back.
Just me and Chris brooding. Okay, great show by Geared Up Kicks. 5-star review. Love the group discussion and setting of the show, and how you can tell everyone is friends. Makes the discussion much better. Keep up the great work. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And,
We're
and we will do our
friends.
best to keep up our friendship and the good work.
Totally. J.R. Kelly 14, 5-star review, keeps getting better and better. Been listening for months and can't get enough. Keep up the great work, fellows. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And I actually got a bunch of messages this week from people that have been listening since like episode 1.
And then they finally just tuned in.
No, they
or
were just like,
contacted,
oh,
I
hey,
should
cool.
say.
I just wanted to let you know I've enjoyed it from the beginning, like 2 or 3
That's
different
awesome.
messages. So yeah,
we
thank you.
love
Thank you.
hearing this shit.
No,
for
yeah,
the record,
definitely.
I mean, who wouldn't? But yes, it's wonderful.
Especially when I'm in a real shitty mood, I like getting those emails because I'm like, aw.
Yeah,
Somebody
I always do that too.
Somebody in
Someone-
Iowa's like, you're a good
Somebody
dude, Mark."
cares.
We're geeks and we're not being beaten up for it because it's not the 80s anymore.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Oh, I lived through the 80s. It was tough.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll get to the 80s in a second here.
All right.
All right. Nerkster. Awesome. 5-star review. Great listening. Recommended. Keep up the great work.
Good shit.
Well,
Thank
yeah.
you very much. 5-star review from Hilarious2323. Awesome. I'm actually from Yakima Valley myself and have never heard of the Hanford Pit. I'm going to have to go
He's
check it
conflating
out.
those two things, the Hanford firing range or whatever it is, and
Oh.
and Mel's Hole.
Oh,
but that's all right
gotcha,
because it's
gotcha.
easy to do. That was a ton of information. But now that you're in there, you could be our eyes on the ground.
If you're near,
Oh, yeah.
Mel's home, man, or whatever, dude, go out there and get it. Like, I mean, don't get too close, but
listen, don't have your life ruined if it really is a black ops site. But if you
Well, yeah.
can and you can bring
Yeah.
a camera, we would love to see it.
yeah, totally.
Run some tests.
Okay, Tannis Justice, 5-star review, just fun. These guys are loud and foul-mouthed.
So
Whoa.
true.
It's a fun
So
way
very
to
true.
explore the paranormal and cryptozoology. I hope I'm a guest someday. Yeah, if you're ever around, man, hit us up. We are all about having guests on. So, all right, our last review here, truly unique and extremely funny. 5-star review from 340948.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's some
Okay.
THX 1138
Yeah.
bullshit.
So here we go. While I love hearing people discuss the paranormal, I feel that many of the podcasts focus on debunking or defending viewpoints to the point that they feel something more like lectures than conversations. It's refreshing to hear open-minded people discuss and speculate the possibilities, no matter how outlandish, which to me is the most enjoyable part of examining the paranormal. And have fun with these topics. As a hopeful skeptic in some of these areas, I'm a believer in others. I admire that you guys look at the events and issues from every angle and leave the topic open to the listener to make their own decision. I deeply respect you guys for not being afraid to examine the more bizarre, obscure stories from cryptozoology and ufology, which I find the most interesting. And that, like the great George Norrie and Art Bell, no topic is out of range for you guys. Keep it up. Awesome. That was a great
That was
review.
great.
That was very good.
I like the phrase hopeful skeptic.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, because I think that's us, really. I mean, obviously, with varying degrees and depending on what subject it is, I can be a little passionate in my beliefs, but I do love that, and that's great. Yeah, it's true. And we love the obscure stuff, too. That's why we keep it coming.
Yeah, no, definitely. All right, so this week we are covering the Silverman. That's it.
He's
That's it.
He's
The Silverman.
The Silverman.
Mary
guy.
Silverman.
Just the
from
Silverman.
Hoboken.
I know. Jeez.
All right, so kicking it off here in 1978, on a desolate stretch of road housing some of Great Britain's most top-secret nuclear facilities, a young service engineer had a terrifying and potentially lethal encounter with a bizarre humanoid entity of unknown origin.
One of my favorite rat movies, for the record, of unknown origin. Peter Weller. I don't know if you guys remember it.
I
Side
don't.
note completely, just a pretty good rat movie.
Do you say rat or rap?
Rat.
They said a rap
rat
too
as
at
in
first.
rap.
I'm
I
like,
thought you said
Peter
rap.
Weller was in a
No,
rap
could you
movie.
imagine
I'm like-
Peter Weller in Breaking 3?
Was this like
Robo-breaking?
was this what the hell was it with
Was it like the Substitute 5 or whatever? Like,
Now I was thinking like Wesley Snipes like New Jack City.
No.
It's a great movie.
It actually is a South thriller of unknown origin. It's just a giant rat lives in a house. Peter Weller's the head of the household, and it's basically a duel of wits between a hyper-intelligent rat of Nim and Peter Weller, and it cuts down to the wire, and it's pretty intense.
Okay, well,
it's
Weller v. Rat.
pre-RoboCop or post-RoboCop?
It was pre-RoboCop,
right?
I think. I
Really?
think it was early 80s.
all right.
And this has nothing to do with the Silverman, for the
No,
record.
but
I
Rob was,
when I heard of Unknown Origin, even though I wrote it, I was like, oh yeah, that movie. It was a great movie. All right, so this one, usually we'll jump right into it. This one requires a smidge of a history lesson.
Oh, Rob, bring us to class. Take
I know,
us back in
I know.
time.
Yeah, I'm gonna be Professor
You're
Rob
over here
for a
dying,
minute.
don't worry.
While Chris is slowly expirating.
Poor
You
Chris
should see
is
how I'm
dying.
holding my mic so I can like shoot away really fast.
Yeah, I noticed last
Before I
week
cough
we did the
into
same
it.
thing. Yeah, that's cool.
It's
That's
he's still
appreciated.
Chris is recovering from the
been
super
like
plague.
years.
There you go.
We're just glad he's here. All right, so back to the Silverman, 1978. What I'm going to tell you guys about is this region where the events took place. Nuzzled, enjoy that. Nuzzled in the northeastern corner of Warrington, England, is the unassuming district of Risley, or Risley. I think it's Risley. Following World War II, the region became the site of the headquarters for Great Britain's fledgling nuclear weapons power program known as the Department of Atomic Energy. This would later evolve into the United Kingdom Atomic Energy Authority, that's the UKAEA, which was tasked with the production of nuclear reactors and process plants, as well as bolstering England's nuclear defense program. The area was also the home of the University Research Reactor. The concrete-shielded Argonaut-class reactor, which went online in 1962, was co-owned by Liverpool and Manchester universities. These educational institutions primarily utilized the highly enriched uranium metal-fueled reactor for experiments involving neutron activity. Or activation. I said that wrong. But, so basically, the reason I'm painting this picture is this, like, kind of sort of desolate, industrialized patch of land is, at least at the time, the hub of most of the both top secret and educational nuclear facilities in Great Britain at the time.
Okay.
This is where our story fundamentally takes place. So on to the case. At approximately 11:30 p.m. on the evening of March 17th, 1978, a 39-year-old service engineer, which is basically an industrial machinist, by the name of Ken Edwards was making the 15-mile journey home to the Warrington Newtown development following a union meeting in Greater Manchester. Everything is so British about that. By all accounts, Edwards was a straight-laced, hard-working man who was prone to neither flights of fancy nor any particular interest in the paranormal. Nevertheless, as the exhausted Edwards drove down an isolated stretch of road through the mostly derelict industrial district where the Risley Atomic Energy Complex was located, something utterly unbelievable snared his attention. Edwards claimed that he first spied what he thought was, and quote here, a man climbing, but he quickly realized that he was looking at a huge humanoid figure lumbering down the steep embankment adjacent to the nuclear facility.
Okay.
The startled engineer immediately hit the brakes and slowed his company van to a halt near the curve of the road, some 50 feet away from the hulking humanoid, which was now partially illuminated by his headlights just off the side of the road. Edwards stared in astonishment as this bipedal beast, which he would later dub the Silver Man, lurched down the hill with its arms outstretched, utilizing a strange, stiff-legged movement as if he was someone who was born without knee joints.
And his arms are out?
No.
Oh, okay,
his arms
sorry.
are not out at the sides.
They're out in front of him?
Yes, and it's fucking weird. We're going to get there.
So he's doing what, the Mummy?
He was sort of doing the Mummy or the Frankenstein.
Okay, all right.
It is sort of like an intergalactic Frankenstein, but
He's
with
got
some notable differences.
No knee joints.
So no knee joints, but he's stooped and walking down this really awkward position, walking down this really steep embankment.
So it's okay. So the embankment. Okay, gotcha. Weird. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
Absolutely. Edwards also noticed that this creature assumed an odd stooped posture as it climbed down the hill, a position which he believed would be impossible for a human to emulate without toppling over. This would be confirmed by investigators who inspected the scene and were unable to imitate the thing's gait without falling repeatedly. The fact that the thing was able to stay upright while negotiating a steep hill in such an awkward position have inclined some to wonder if the Silver Man, akin to Apollo astronauts who were able to leap about on the moon, was whether or not he was susceptible to the same laws of gravity as the rest of us.
Oh, he's got like the Superman effect.
It could be.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's from a place with much
Krypton
denser gravity,
has much higher gravity.
Others have speculated that only a robotic entity could perform this task without collapsing. Just food for thought.
Okay.
At this point, the eccentric entity, you're welcome, paused at the edge of the road, and Edwards got his first clear look at it under the glare of his high beams. The anxious engineer estimated that the figure was at least 7 feet in height and was either clad in some sort of reflective silver fabric akin to a radiation suit or had a dull metallic epidermis not unlike Alabama's infamous Metal Man of Falkville, which we talked about in previous pods, obviously. He also claimed that the figure's roundish face was black with no discernible features except for a pair of glowing eyes. Even stranger, Edwards claimed that it had 2 thin arms that were not attached at the shoulders but stuck straight out of his pectoral region like a T-Rex. So he's got 2 long, thin arms.
What the fuck
They're
is happening?
They're not tiny like T-Rex, but the illustration he drew...
What I just pictured,
They were just like weird alien nipples. I mean, that's always a possibility. We don't understand
they could be super giant, weird, extended alien nipples.
We don't know their
biology.
Their autonomy. What is it? Autonomy? Anatomy? Autonomy?
Their autonomous anatomy. We do not
We don't know how they're built. Or, but if he's
God.
claiming that their arms and that's a weird spot for arms. Just having arms around
no,
your
I mean,
chest,
it's
what do you
close
do?
to where ours are.
It is.
Okay, right now, let's take your arms, put them on your chest. How do you live your life?
Not
With my
well.
arms coming out of my
What
tits.
do you do?
That's how.
I mean, as
with
a
courage
human,
and with courage.
and dignity.
Yeah,
Courage and dignity.
and possible fear.
Oh, my
Man,
God.
all right. So he's kind of got almost like didn't Krang have arms like that? Remember Krang, Ninja Turtles?
From Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, Shredder. Remember he had those weird little arms?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but he's got so basically the drawing is he's got this round head, these pinpoint round glowy eyes. He's got a big ass, like normal humanoid body, basically, but these like not really spindly, thin though, thin.
So, but he's got like a torso, like shoulders, but the arms just aren't on the shoulders.
Basically,
Okay,
yes.
coming
they're
right out
just
of
come out
his-
of his boobies, man
Yeah.
boobs, or
Man boobs.
whatever gender boobs it is.
That's true.
His non-specific gender boobs.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. There we go. All right. We covered all the bases there. No one's going to get offended. We're good. We're good. Non-specific gender
Boobs.
boobs.
The Bizarre being trudged into the road directly in front of Edward's vehicle, then abruptly turned to face him, staring into Edward's eyes with his own self-illuminated orbs. And that's when things went from weird to horrifying,
So the thing actually made like contact.
in a manner of speaking.
Okay.
Without warning, 2 pencil-thin, quote-unquote, energy beams of white light shot from the humanoid's eyes directly into Edward's van. The engineer claimed that as soon as he was struck by these intense ocular beams, he was overcome by a dizzying sensation and that he lost all sense of time. Edwards also claimed that the beams exerted some kind of invisible force that had incapacitated him, which he compared to, and this is a quote from Edwards, someone with 2 enormous hands pressing me down from the top. The pressure was tremendous. It seemed to paralyze me. I could only move my eyes. The rest of me was rigid.
Whoa.
Stranger still, he claimed that he was overcome with unconventional thoughts rushing through his head.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we're not going to get much more of an explanation.
Like mind
Oh.
crimes?
Because he could only...
Yeah,
Yeah, like
right.
Is this what Queensryche album's based on?
Operation Mindcrime. Yeah, no, it's the end of Clockwork Orange. He's being fed things. But he said he was overcome with unconventional thoughts, but he only remembered one that kept looping over and over in his brain.
No,
which
what is it?
And it's actually something I think we would all ask. Is this something from outer space, and what does it want with me?
That's the thought that he kept having?
That's the only one he remembered, but he remembered the rest of them being distinctly unconventional.
Yeah, because that one you said is fairly conventional.
That's
as-
pretty much what we'd all
That's
think
as
at that moment.
conventional as you can get.
Yeah, but no. Apparently he was not just limited to that, just limited to remembering that.
So this thing has some sort of laser beam, not necessarily a weapon, but maybe like a...
What,
I mean, I
almost
guess-
Omega beams?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, he's
Except you don't
yeah,
go back
I
in
mean-
time or whatever.
kind of got dark side Omega beams.
A
huh?
little bit. I mean,
They're more like they feel. It seems more like gravity. He's got gravity beams.
but it
Yeah,
had
with the
there's-
weird pressure pushing him down.
absolutely
Yeah.
the physical pressure, but there are other effects.
Okay.
That we will get into
Okay,
here.
here we go.
A moment later, Edwards regained control of his muscles, but he realized with a sudden jolt of pain that his fingers were throbbing and covered with what looked like sunburnt flesh. Even more disturbing to him was the fact that the circuitry of his pricey radio transceiver had completely burned out during the ordeal. So this
Super
had an
hot gravity.
Yeah, super hot gravity that apparently burned his hands.
Hot, juicy gravity.
Which is the only kind of gravity I want. But surprisingly, not his face. It burned
Just-
his hands.
Okay.
Why his hands? Where were his hands with?
His hands, I assume, were on the steering wheel. So
And
they
it-
were
and it-
Well,
closed.
steering wheels get hot though too. So
It's true. Maybe
Okay.
it was the parts that were in contact with
And
the actual
the
vehicle.
circuitry of his radio was toast?
Toast. Completely.
yeah, I feel like he would
Burned
be
out.
in worse condition if circuitry got fucked up.
You would think.
If the heat's
Like-
that high.
If it's like screwing up metal, you just walked away with some
Yeah.
red fingertips. You think you got away pretty good,
Pretty easily,
really.
yeah.
Jauntily thing.
Well, we'll see how that works out.
Oh no.
Okay.
He's the meat.
Yeah, seared.
Yeah, hey, no spoilers. We'll get there when we get there.
He's burger.
Oh, my God. Pure Angus.
burger.
Ground chuck. When Edwards looked up, he saw that the entity had apparently lost interest in him and was heading straight for the 10-foot-high barbed wire top security fence that surrounded the fire station opposite the nuclear facility. Once it arrived at the fence, the Silver Man raised its fingerless hands upward again. Yep. Classic mummy fashion. Then lowered its arms and walked directly through the barrier like a cosmic phantasm. Bwahaha.
Oh.
So
All
this
right.
motherfucker just melts
So-
right through a chain link fence. He don't give fucks. Lifts the
Okay.
arm. He lifts the nipples of power
Yeah, he activated something with
Yeah.
that maneuver.
All right.
Something.
and lost all molecular density. as he's wont to do.
Yeah, did we have a story, the robo flowers, where they made the molecules smaller or something?
Well, that's what the female, the
It's
little
fine.
girl
Look it.
thought.
It's
that
fine.
the moleculars began to glow. Or moleculars. Jesus Christ. Science! I just got sciencey as fuck. The molecules of the UFO were glowing.
So
she
this
thought.
thing, technically, like, it adjusted matter?
Either its own matter or the
Or
matter of the
matter
fence.
of the fence. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Oh God, I know what it is. It's the Silver Surfer.
Yeah, well,
It's what is
That's
it?
exactly what it does.
Norn
Rad.
Rad. It's Norn Rad.
oh my God.
That's exactly the powers
he
he
is such
has.
a great
He does
character.
have that power, yeah.
All right, we'll save it for the
Okay,
end, guys.
all right, save it
All
for Silver Surfer.
As it quote unquote melted through the fence, that's what he said. It seemed like it looked like to him that he just melted right through it.
Okay.
So that's more like T2, sort of, except he doesn't go liquid.
Oh yeah, that's right.
As soon as it melted through the fence, the creepy, luminous-eyed creature clambered up the hill next to the fire station and disappeared into the woods beyond. Stunned by this entire episode, Edwards claimed that he remained motionless on the roadside for a few minutes in an attempt to compose himself before he threw his vehicle into gear and sped home. Even though the drive should have taken no more than 5 minutes, upon arriving home, Edwards noticed that the time was 12:30 a.m., nearly an hour later than it ought to have been.
So we got some missing time happening
some
here?
missing time.
All right, good to know.
The
Good to know.
engineer, and this is interesting because he didn't pursue this. The engineer simply chalked it up to the trauma of this harrowing event, making him lose track of time. But it's difficult not to surmise, much like Uncle Mark, that what he experienced was the same missing time phenomenon that is so often associated with alleged alien abduction cases. Perhaps Edwards didn't spend the entire span of missing time sitting behind the wheel, semi-comatose with shock. Maybe he was in some kind of hyper-technological spacecraft undergoing a notoriously invasive alien examination.
But he doesn't remember any of that, does he?
No.
This is just complete conjecture?
I'll keep reading.
Okay.
If that were the case, either Edwards had no recollection of the event, as most do not until these lost memories are reclaimed through hypnosis, as dubious as that is, or he simply refused to publicly speak about it. Although some researchers have claimed that he was haunted by thoughts of abduction in the years that followed. So
Okay.
there's some implication, though I haven't found a lot of direct evidence, just people referring to the thought that he had a kind of a haunting sensation. It would kind of make sense. If this thing is an extraterrestrial, we just don't know because he wasn't hypnotized, even though we all agree that's a fairly dubious way to fish for information. But the fact that he's missing basically 55 minutes of time, give or take, it's significant.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether or not Edwards had any additional alien contact that evening, when he finally arrived home, Barbara, immediately knew that something was terribly wrong. Just before she could read him the riot act for being so late, Barbara watched as her pale husband walked past her directly to the liquor cabinet to pour himself a shot of whiskey. The trembling Edwards threw back the liquor, hoping that the liquid fire would calm his jittery nerves, then turned to his apprehensive wife and simply stated, "I've seen a silver man."
Whoa.
Could you imagine that?
A silver man.
Somebody just comes in, throws back a shot. I've seen a silver man.
Yeah. Like deadpan, not
Yeah,
like.
just
Yeah.
Yep. Edwards fixed himself another drink and told his wife about his run-in with the inexplicable, shimmering-eyed fiend. She claimed that she wasn't sure how to react to the story, stating, "He had been very badly shaken, and I don't know what to make of it. I would have to see it myself to really believe it, but he saw something very strange, I know." So maybe not the glowing endorsement of faith you want from your wife, but at least it was sympathetic.
Well, but how long have they been married? I mean, how well do they get along?
Yeah, was it like a handicap?
Yeah, like
Oh, yeah. On the dole, beating each other up.
yeah. I mean, she's
I
just
don't
like,
know.
you know what? He's probably cheating on me. He's claiming he saw some shit. I don't know. He seems pretty shaken up. Who knows? Maybe not. Maybe they had a great loving
You're
marriage.
right. I can't prejudge Barbara's reaction.
Yeah, maybe she's the victim.
Wow.
Maybe she's the silver man.
Oh, dun, dun, dun.
Wow.
There you go.
And
All right.
case closed. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Barb.
Great pod.
See you next week.
Later that night, Edwards was getting ready for bed when he abruptly stopped and began putting his clothes back on. He knew that he would have to set his fear of ridicule aside and report this abnormal event, especially considering that it had happened in such close proximity to an atomic reactor. Anxious and feeling the effects of the whiskey, Edwards said to his wife, I think I'd better go to the police. Will you take me?" Barbara, of course, complied and drove her husband to the police station at Padgate, which was located less than 2 miles from their home. The police constables on duty, including officers Roy Kirkpatrick and Rob Thompson, were understandably skeptical but rapidly realized that Edwards was genuinely scared. It was then that they began to take his admittedly unbelievable account very seriously. After some convincing, the uneasy Edwards agreed to accompany the officers back to the scene of the encounter, where they met up with a team of 20 baton-armed UKAEA security guards. That's the United Kingdom Atomic Energy Authority. So the guards that were there to deal with that were on hand, plus the cops, plus Edwards at this point.
All right, that's a pretty big posse.
Yeah, it actually is.
Batons in hand.
Well, I mean, if there's an infiltration of some of your key nuclear research facilities,
Dude, get the baton team on it.
Absolutely. It bears mentioning that one of the men on the scene later stated that when the UKAEA security team was told of Edward's strange sighting, none of the men so much as offered a smirk. Is this because they were stone-cold professionals, or could it be that they were familiar with this peculiar night caller? I don't know. Unfortunately, the search party found no sign of the creature, nor any indication that the fence had been tampered with. But the UKAEA men all refused to enter the forest where Edwards had seen the physics-defying figure vanish.
The baton guys don't want to go into the woods? There's 20 of them. They only got batons.
Maybe they know. Maybe they know that this is something you don't trifle with.
It's true.
They've heard the stories, probably.
They have. It's true. I shouldn't judge them for this.
No.
Courage.
Yes. It takes a lot of courage when you're dealing with the Silvermen.
Above all.
All right. It wouldn't be until well after 4 a.m. that the traumatized engineer would arrive home and attempt to get a few restless hours of sleep. His insomnia would last for days. A few hours later, Edwards rolled out of bed and noticed that his manual watch had stopped at 11:45 p.m., which is presumably when he and his van were immersed in the entity's I-beams.
Yeah, interesting.
He later claimed that all attempts that were made to repair the watch were for naught. Edwards then realized that the sunburned fingers on his right hand were scarring with 3 dark striations that ran the entire length of his fingers. These strange marks faded within 3 weeks. Edwards felt that this was particularly odd, as he was not prone to getting sunburned or having any other type of dermatological ailments. Almost as bizarre as his enigmatic nighttime sunburn was the effects the allegedly alien energy beams had on Edward's transceiver. The expensive device was the property of his employer and was necessary for his work as a service engineer. So when Edwards discovered that it wasn't working, he immediately took it in for repairs. According to UFO investigators Jenny Randalls and Paul Wetnall, who studied the event thoroughly, it took the better part of 3 weeks before the engineer discovered that the damage was too prolific to be repaired. He also discovered that the probable cause of the damage was, according to Randalls, a massive power surge through the set, which had burned out the whole of the transmitting diode circuit and most of the capacitors. The service repairman who had performed the diagnostic on the device surmised that the damage was likely the result of a substantial surge being picked up by the aerial and blowing its circuitry apart, which would seem to coincide with Edwards' account.
Okay.
So he said this got hit by a huge burst of energy.
Right.
Maybe he assumed it was a lightning strike or something.
Yep.
But so whatever this was, coming out of the creature's eyes, clearly got picked up by the antenna, channeled through the radio.
Right into the circuitry and blew it. Okay.
Yeah, so whatever the hell it was.
It surged and toasted it. I mean, everything's toast. All right.
In the days following this affair, both police officers and independent investigators combed the location looking for any sort of clue that might indicate what the Silverman was and where it had come from. But only 2 things of note were discovered at the scene. The first was an oval-shaped patch of flattened grass atop the embankment that the being had descended initially, which many feel might be an indication of a landing site. The second peculiar thing found by the investigators was the dead body of a rabbit that had no evident injuries. While this poor bunny may be completely unrelated to the Risley event, there are some who have speculated that it might have been a perhaps unintentional collateral victim of the Silverman's energy beam.
Oh, dude, Peter Rabbit, R.I.P.
Yeah, no doubt. Others surmise that the pitiable critter had just been scared to death The carcass, however, was left to rot, making this all wild conjecture at best. I mean, unfortunately, they didn't take it and test it.
Right.
The police pursued the investigation for days and even tried surprising Edwards by showing him a man in a silver fire retardant suit. But Edwards was nonplussed and insisted that it looked nothing like it. It wouldn't be long before the police would discard the inquiry altogether and dismiss the whole thing as just one of those odd incidents that happen from time to time.
Wow.
That is just absurd.
What else do you do?
I know. I mean, you have to. It's such a British way to dismiss it. Just one of those odd happenstances.
You know, it's over there in the books now.
In the books.
Move along.
Indeed. Yeah, well, I mean, what do you do if you have nothing to go off of and you've run your tests and you've not buried the rabbit? You gotta be like, I'll tell you, dude, it should happen. Literally, shit happens.
Literally, the weirdest shit just happened.
Yeah. Okay.
So
All
you
right.
think that maybe this is all done?
Yeah.
You'd be wrong.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Oh, man.
At about midnight on Thursday, March 23rd, 1978, a mere 6 days after his frightening run-in with the unknown, Edwards once again found himself at the site of the event, this time with a man who was identified only as a freelance UFO investigator from Leeds.
That's pretty rock and roll.
Yeah.
I'm a freelance UFO investigator.
That's the card you want.
That is, man.
Edwards claimed that for a second time he felt himself being overcome by the disturbing mental and physical sensations that had flooded him during his staring match with the Silver Man.
As he's with the investigator there.
Yeah.
Really? Whoa.
Fighting a nearly overwhelming urge to immediately leave the scene, Edwards checked his fear and forced himself to get out of the vehicle and began walking up the embankment with the man from Leeds. Once they reached the top, he and the investigator went their separate ways, and that's when Edwards noticed the Silver Man standing in the distance. As quoted from Randall's and Wetnall's article on the case, it was then, in the distance, that he saw the figure again, atop the wasteland and walking away from him. The wasteland.
The wasteland.
Wasteland. Now it's suddenly like fucking Road Warrior apocalyptic.
Yeah.
Dust fucking swirls and fucking
Yeah,
charred
that's
remains
not what I
of
pictured
vehicles.
in my head.
They probably just mean an empty expanse, but still, it's fucking funny.
Who runs Bartertown?
Yeah, indeed.
UFO researcher from
Freelance
Leeds.
UFO researchers from Leeds. It was at this point that the grotesque apparition vanished, never to be seen again. The courage that had inspired Edwards to accompany the investigator to the top of the hill evaporated, and he rushed down the slope and sped home, evidently leaving the Leeds fellow behind.
Yeah, so, okay.
Oh, my God, he just
bailed.
Yeah, he bailed on him completely. So they get to the top of this thing, him and the dude, they split off. He sees it, and then he's just like, I'm fucking out. And he leaves the dude there. Like, he didn't like tell the guy, like, yo, I see it. Like,
I don't.
Apparently not.
I don't think so.
Well,
I think he
I
just
would've-
left.
yeah, all right. Well, I mean, I'd assume it's got to be a very frightening situation.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's got to be abject terror.
Especially if you're the guy from Leeds where you're like, oh, hello, where did he go? And he's just gone.
Oh, if I was
oh.
as
Yeah,
someone who
but
was
like-
aspired to freelance ufology in his life, if somebody left me the fuck behind after allegedly seeing something that was possibly
I wonder
destructive,
If is he the dude's ride?
yeah, I think so.
Oh, man, just bailed.
It's a dick move.
Well, fear makes a man do many a thing.
Let's just hope they went in
Ugh.
separate vehicles, and let's not judge Edwards too harshly.
Okay.
The next strange incident occurred on April 2nd, 1978, but did not involve an actual sighting, at least on the part of Edwards. According to Edwards, he and his wife were driving home along the usual route that took them past the nuclear power plant at about 2 a.m. following a day trip to Yorkshire, when he was suddenly overcome by that same disquieting feeling that had gripped him twice before. For reasons he was unable to explain, Edwards felt compelled to bring his vehicle to a halt at the location of the first sighting. He then climbed out of the vehicle and stood in the center of the road, where he claimed the sensations only increased in intensity. Suddenly he blacked out, collapsing in the middle of the road. Before Barbara could get out of the car, her husband came to, got to his feet, and scrambled back to the van. His wife drove them home at breakneck speed. It was then that the engineer understandably pledged to his wife that he would never travel by that road again, no matter how far out of his way he had to go. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock.
Yeah,
I don't know what you're
Jesus.
doing anyway.
Yeah, why is this guy
Is this
keep
the
going
only
back?
road in town?
Apparently.
I think I would have just made that my big plan after the first encounter. Mm-hmm. But,
Okay.
okay. The final weird incident in the Risley ordeal happened in the wee hours of April 12th, 1978. Edwards claimed that he had been awoken in the middle of the night by a subsonic electrical hum that seemed to fill his house. He climbed out of bed, careful not to disturb his wife, and began searching for the source of the strange sound. The engineer assumed that something mechanical had been left on, but when he found nothing running, he decided to check outside. According to Edwards, the sound only increased in volume according to Edwards, the sound increased in volume as soon as he opened the window, but he could still see nothing. A few days later, it was discovered that 2 residents of Risley had also heard the hum, and when they looked skyward, they realized it was emanating from an oval red UFO. While there's no direct correlation between the UFO and the Silver Man, it's difficult not to at least make a circumstantial connection. I mean, the fact that Edwards heard it too, I mean, it just seems like there's a lot of weird shit going on here.
Right.
And it goes beyond this. UFO researchers would later discover that on the same night as Edwards' first encounter, 4 unidentified youths claimed to have spotted a cigar-shaped craft floating over the university research reactor area. The flap included 8 other confirmed sightings in the weeks preceding the Risley event. So they were in the thick of a UFO flap. You got red glowing orbs. You've got cigar-shaped things. It's interesting. But you can't necessarily 100% say that it's Silverman related, but it's really hard not to want to leap to that conclusion.
Right.
All right. Constables Thompson and Kirkpatrick decided to pursue other lines of inquiry and interrogated students from nearby universities to see if all of this might have been a hoax.
The children.
Could you imagine?
Playing games.
In response to the suggestion that he might have been the victim of some overeager college pranksters, Edwards responded angrily, "I wish they could tell me how they did it, how they blew up my radio and walked through a fence. Some stunt." Yeah.
Nice.
Just imagine how pissed he when he says that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, blow up my radio, walk through a fence. Hit me with I-beams, cause a bunch of pressure, lose a bunch of time. How'd you do it?
Good job, kids.
Yeah, way to go. Good job.
Whippersnappers.
You done good.
Goddamn kids.
An interesting side note to these events came when Randall's and UFO investigator Peter Howe exposed the fact that what they termed as unusual experiments were being carried out in an atomic energy authority building adjacent to where the Silver Man was seen.
Whoa.
While there is no way to know, one almost can't help but to wonder if there's a chance that the unusual experiments which Randall's and Howe claimed were being conducted at one of the UK AEA nuclear facilities might have been akin to the fictional experiment to create an interdimensional portal that went so horribly awry in Stephen King's 1980 novella The Mist.
It's
No,
always
or
a portal.
Howard the Duck.
Or the Philadelphia experiment, which is allegedly true, but also a pretty decent Michael Pare film from the 80s.
That's Howard the Duck, man.
Howard the Duck, you know, I don't hate it as much as a lot of people do.
Interdimensional duck.
And they had like Lovecraftian monsters at the end. Oh,
Yeah.
the movie's horrible. I
It's
fucking
no,
know
it's
it is.
not.
No, yes, it is. It's
Oh,
bad.
yeah.
These are terrible. Whatever.
A lot of interspecies sex, though, at the end there. So
Didn't
that's
want to
pretty
bring it
hot.
up, but thanks for going there.
Yeah, that's pretty sexy.
It's in there. You can't ignore it.
Hot duck on Back to the Future Mom Love. Could these unidentified atomic scientists been working on one of the universities or other clandestine agencies' payroll to open a rift between our world and one with being so bizarre that they would stretch the limits of our terrestrial imaginations? Could this shambling silver-clad entity be, in reality, a refugee from a parallel dimension?
Refugee.
A refugee. You don't have to live like a
Or a
refugee.
dictator.
Or a
You
dictator.
like to throw those
yeah.
in there, too.
Yeah, you know, it could be anything.
Yeah.
Tantalizing as this theory may be, what the nature of these experiments was and who might have conducted them has, unfortunately, never been and likely never will be revealed. It goes without saying that as soon as the police released the information regarding Edward's eerie encounter to the local Warrington Guardian, the press descended on him and his wife like sharks in chum-infested waters. In no time at all, headlines in newspapers across Great Britain were ablaze with headlines that ranged from the Sunday People's Almost Tame, Close Encounter as Ken Meets a Monster, to the Sunday Post's playfully derisive, Silver Giant Beams Light Fantastic, to the news of the world's outright ridiculous, Ken and the Flasher from Outer Space.
Wow.
Yeah.
Taking liberties with the headlines here,
Just
people.
kind of being
Flasher.
dicks. Yeah.
What would the New York Post say?
Indeed. Within days, the Edwards' modest home became a media mecca. Their lawn swarmed with reporters, amateur ufologists, curiosity seekers, and most disturbingly, disciples of the Aetherius Society.
What?
Oh, man.
Members of this cult claimed to channel messages from extraterrestrials and believed that Edwards had been chosen by God to see this alien emissary. Yeah.
What?
Well, it's clear.
Okay. All right.
That is
He's
true.
a chosen prophet.
The evidence is there.
Yeah, it's science.
All right.
Even worse than the true believers were the throngs of skeptics who flocked to the Edwards property and publicly decried him as either a charlatan or a lunatic.
That's just rude.
Yeah, no, they're being
You can
dicks.
read the guy's story, not believing what you don't got to run up on the guy and just be like, "You're a piece of shit. What are you talking about? You don't know what you're talking about." That's
He wasn't silver. He
Yeah.
was pewter at best.
just fucking dickheads.
Edwards' neighbors confirmed that the brouhaha had grown so intense that the Edwards were forced to cancel their vacation plans and go into hiding.
Oh, see,
But as disturbing
Garbo.
as all the public ridicule and media uproar was, the worst was far from over for poor Ken Edwards.
What the fuck?
Yeah, this is like the story of fucking Job.
He's burger, isn't he?
Yeah. He sees the meat. He's thrice meat. Within a year of his now infamous sighting, just as his life was starting to return to normal, Edwards became unexpectedly ill. He experienced a loss of energy and suffered from severe stomach pains, and after a battery of tests, he was diagnosed with cancer of the kidneys. That fucking sucks.
dude.
Yeah.
Fucking Kenny Ed, what's going on?
Edwards underwent major surgery to remove the cancer, but within a few months, the insidious cells had reappeared in his throat. Within 5 years of his encounter with the Silverman, Ken Edwards had tragically succumbed to the horrible disease. Randalls, one of the most prolific investigators of this event, publicly wondered whether or not the Silverman's optical discharge might have mutated Edwards' once healthy cells, writing, "The after effects of this event were dramatic, perhaps even tragic." I would say there's nothing perhaps about it. As for Ken, over the next 5 years, he began to develop multiple cancers while still in his late 30s. He died from what may or may not be related injuries. How could you have ever proven that? And it's true. I mean, but the fact that he got burns and, sunburns, go to melanomas pretty quick.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows what was in this beam? So I'm gonna end it on this note, and I think this is interesting. A few years after I wrote the first article about the Silverman, which is what I called this from, I was contacted by Stephen Hopper, a man claiming to be Ken Edwards' nephew.
Whoa, we have a direct line to this?
Yeah.
Okay, all right,
Now,
bring it home, Bobby.
He has not yet responded to my calls back, but I'm doing my best because what he has to say is very interesting.
Okay, so we have a direct line from this sighting to this dude's nephew.
Yes,
Okay.
or maybe honorary nephew. It might have been one of those titles that you confer upon like a good friend of the family, like
Right.
Uncle Chris and Uncle Rob to your kids kind of
All
thing.
right, here we
All
go.
right, so this is the first message he sent to me. I'm going to read it verbatim. Uncle Ken, as I called him as a child, never changed his story, and these incidents profoundly affected him for the rest of his life. Ken was never the same again. He became a particularly nasty shade of yellow and died a horrible death.
Oh.
Now this is where, and that's sorrowful, of course, but this is where things get really interesting. Years later, I met a colleague of his, Mr. Lewis, who claims to have been with him at the time and confirmed everything Ken had said to me. He confirmed that it was true. Even my dad, his friend, thought he had gone la-la, so I'm glad to put the record straight.
So this Mr.
Hopper.
Or his...
Lewis.
Yeah,
You're talking about Mr. Lewis.
So Mr. Lewis was during the abduction events?
So here's what this is what I've sent out and what I hope very much to get a response to.
Okay.
I don't know if what he's saying is that Mr. Lewis was friends with Edwards during this period and can confirm that he truly claimed this really happened and that he went through hell, obviously with the press and the onlookers and then worst of all, cancer. Or if he's literally saying that Lewis was in the car with him when it happened and that maybe he just did not want to be associated with it, so Edwards covered up for him.
Okay.
Now, if that's the case, I desperately want to talk to this Mr. Lewis, which I don't know if that's a pseudonym or not.
I feel like he's probably talking about the former, the first one.
I do too. I agree with Chris. I do think he's probably saying he was friends with Edwards at the time and
Yes.
he can confirm that he went through all this hell.
Yeah.
Right.
But on the 1 in a billion chance that there was somebody that might still be alive that actually saw the Silver Man, I mean, that would be gold.
Yeah, totally.
So I'm hoping. But either way, I want to talk to Hopper more extensively and maybe find some stories that he might be able to relate that weren't related in the public record, which is where obviously all of this was culled from.
Yeah.
So that basically wraps it up. This poor bastard saw something. It was a terrible shock to his system. He got lambasted in the press. The cops were slightly sympathetic, but very skeptical. Cultists are adoring him. Fucking people are ruining his lawn. And then he gets a horrible, horrible disease and dies. I mean, it almost makes you think that the fucking sheriff from Falkville won the fucking lottery by comparison.
Yeah,
seriously,
Jesus, I know.
Jesus. How do you start to break this down?
Well, here's the things. Most people obviously think it's an extraterrestrial.
Okay.
The UFO
All right.
sightings, I mean, the cigar-shaped craft,
Yeah,
the red
that's-
object with the electrical humming,
Right.
the flattened oval, which doesn't necessarily, I mean, there's no way to know that it was
Yeah,
caused
that's
by the
not a-
pressure of a UFO, but it does seem to be like what a lot of trace cases are. So most people right out the gate assume it's an alien. Now, if it is, just for the sake of shits and giggles to say it is, would you guys think it's an automaton or a biological extraterrestrial?
There's no way.
No way to know. I think it's probably robotic. We don't have Earthlings on Mars, but we got fucking robots on Mars. It's
Right,
easier to send
right.
robots. The way this thing seemed to be moving at a stooped angle with these weird protrusions coming out of his chest. Now, who knows what alien biology is like? I'm not saying that it can't be biological.
Right,
But
right.
but it really seems to me like if robots can do really crazy shit that seem to defy laws
it's
of
like
physics.
their version of like the Mars rover, basically.
Possibly.
Right.
If it is an extraterrestrial, it would make sense to send robots. That's the first thing we're
Well,
going to
yeah.
send everywhere.
'Cause I guess
Yeah. Well,
there
for
is-
us though,
There's
I mean,
nothing.
Yeah, well, we're dainty little flesh bags that die at the first hint of too
Yeah.
much heat, not enough oxygen.
Of course, it could have been a thing in a thing.
It could have been a
Right.
suit too. I mean, what he described. I mean, they talked about the silver, like maybe being an epidermis, and the black being his
Yeah.
face, but that could very well have been a protective
But
mask and a
he
suit.
didn't see anything or give any indication that it was biological.
Yes, but there's no real indication that there's anything robotic either. I mean, that's a leaning I have, but it doesn't
Right.
mean that I'm 100% committed to it.
Well, I'm
Or
not.
could it have been a human-made robot, a super advanced weapon?
Could have been.
You know, I mean, 78, the thick of the Cold War.
I feel like they would have engineered something a little bit better, something with knees.
That's true.
So I mean,
If it was made by
I'm
us.
not sure
the lack
why-
of knees and shitty arms don't
Yeah.
really seem very efficient.
Why was it all silver except it had a black face and
face,
just some
yeah.
eyes?
It's like basically a bowling ball atop a fucking, I guess, a weird robo body with super nipples. It's just fucking strange. Here's something that occurred to me when I was doing the research this originally. It's like, while there is no indication that there was ever a UFO crash at Risley or anything like that, maybe sometime in prehistory, something went down, and I know it's the Scooby-Doo lover in me, but maybe it's a space ghost. It's a dead alien that can walk through fucking fences, that isn't enslaved to gravity.
Space apparition.
space. Yeah,
It crashed during like the Neolithic era.
It's
Maybe
a
a cult
space
got started.
specter?
A space specter.
But apparently, though,
A galactic ghost.
But it's got all those powers to affect things like beams and
I
stuff.
don't know how alien ghosts work. Shit.
I do, and I'm saying that's just not possible.
Listen, I know it's bullshit. It's absolutely absurd. I just love the idea that it could be a combination of extraterrestrial
Yeah.
and phantasm.
And a ghost.
Just
Yeah,
because
it's cool.
I mean, you don't really
No,
deal with
it
that
sounds
hardly.
fun.
Event Horizon in
Yeah.
a few movies, but for the most part, no one broaches the two.
No.
But there was apparently some type of unidentified tests happening.
Yeah, that's the
Well,
other thing.
Yeah.
But they're not confirmed, so you can't really.
This is why this is going to get a second thing. I think I would like to talk to Randall's or Howe or
Right.
Wetnall. If any of them are still alive, I'm gonna start putting feelers out, because if there's any chance of finding out more from Stephen Hopper or maybe this mysterious Mr. Lewis or these UFO investigators, because it was Randall's and Howe that first said something that one of the buildings had scientists that were conducting an unusual experiment, and the quote is literally just that: unusual experiment.
But
Yeah.
there's nothing else about that.
No, so you don't know. So
okay.
I mean, of course, I started pissing in the wind and talking about the mist, but really, there's no reason to assume it's an interdimensional portal or anything.
Right.
Yeah.
But who knows? Well, I mean,
I don't-
that your imagination wants to go. Is it like a Frankenstein like robot that's designed to go in nuclear reactors?
Just
and-
well, that's because
is it-
the word he picked in that sentence.
Exactly. But it could have
Yeah.
been any number of things. Does it have anything to do with it? If it doesn't, why would they even bring it up?
Right.
Or do they think maybe extraterrestrials for some reason are interested in these experiments? Because the people ufologists are constantly talking about, and with good reason, I think, because of the evidence, how interested UFOs seem to be in nuclear power sites and in nuclear missile silos, and how they've like incapacitated them in the past, or even triggered the launching mechanism, thankfully stopping it before they went off. There's lots of cases where they seem to be very intrigued by our nuclear capabilities. So could this be an alien spy that can walk through literally fences and walls trying to figure out what the fuck is going on at Risley back in 78?
Maybe. But
Yeah.
it was going into the fence into not the nuclear facility, though, right? There was like a firehouse or something.
No, it was you're right. It was walking across the way. So maybe it just likes fire trucks.
Maybe we're just misinterpreting everything. It's like, dude, I just want to see what that sweet ride is.
Maybe he's like a
Can you
7-year-old
ring the
kid.
bell? Can you please ring the bell? I guess nothing indicates besides robotic. To us, what would be robotic movement that whether
the
it's
jerky, no bendy.
Of
Yeah.
course, it feels like
that
It,
smacks.
it feels robotic, but is that really? That's our take on what's robotic. Is that
Absolutely.
really,
It's our take on 20th century early science
Yeah.
fiction shitty robot.
Yeah, but is
robotics.
that really? Could that really be considered? But then again, like you said, there's nothing to say that it's biological. It's just kind of there.
There's nothing to say that it's
Either or. Okay.
not interdimensional.
sure.
I mean, but the spate
So-
of UFOs though is
yeah,
is
that
marked.
makes it. No, that definitely puts a little mark on it that people did, but nobody else witnessed the Silverman. He witnessed it twice?
Twice.
Okay. But nobody else witnessed it. But there was UFOs in the area at the time, which is interesting
Yes.
because we have to.
And they were seen by everyone, it seems, except Edwards. He never
Yeah, he
saw the
didn't see
UFO. He
anything.
heard the
Yeah.
hum and he opened up the window and it heard it louder, but he
Um,
didn't go out and check. Other people later claimed that there was a red object hovering
Yeah.
in the sky.
Right. So I guess on the skeptical hoaxer side, not really any reason for him to hoax this.
No.
Nothing whatsoever. I mean,
Absolutely
he obviously
not.
didn't get anything out of it.
No, he was not, and he got a lot of
Some stories that we
negative.
cover, like you can kind of see the angle where, like, okay, this person is a crazy person, they're making this up, but then other stuff, you just kind of the way the story unfolds, you're like, you have nothing to gain from this.
Let's break
Like,
down what he did. First off, he didn't call the media. He didn't,
No,
he
not at
didn't
all,
inform
yeah.
the press. He went to the police. And you know what? He was afraid of the ridicule. I mean, it was stated that he
Rightfully
didn't want to
so,
go
yeah.
at first. He wasn't going to do it, and then finally is like, "All right, Barb, you got to drive me to the police station." Why? Well, because there's an anomalous fucking entity walking through,
A nuclear reactor,
top secret
basically,
nuclear
yeah.
facility. Like I've gotten messages from other people saying, like, I had an aunt that worked there. She was just a chef. And she was sworn to secrecy under penalty of la la la. If she
Really?
mentioned anything she saw, and she was just cooking there. So this wasn't
not to do with the Silverman, but just
working
Right.
in these facilities. So this was, I mean, if this is like the hub of their nuclear defense as
Sure.
well
Yeah.
as their
Yeah.
nuclear power,
Okay.
on top of the place where Liverpool and Manchester are doing whatever experiments they are with neutrons.
Right.
I mean, this place is probably a hub of a lot of top secret activity. But so this guy, he was rightfully concerned. I mean, he was
Yeah.
educated enough to be a machinist, and he saw a weird thing in
Yeah.
this nuclear hub.
Yep.
So that's the first thing. Secondly, he never attempted to capitalize it by anything I've read. He never tried to sell a story to TV or a book. In fact, if anything, he loathed the attention that he got due to this.
Right.
Yeah, and it was all almost exclusively negative. And
So whatever interaction he had with this unknown being ultimately possibly could have led to his death.
that's
As far
the
as
suggestion.
as far as the exposure to these energy beams, but not what's interesting though is that when the person there said that he turned yellow,
Yeah, jaundice.
Yeah, like his
I
liver
wonder,
shut
is
down
that
or something.
Is
Yeah, it
that
could be.
something that happens with radiation sickness, or is that something that happens often with cancer?
I know with liver failure. It
Yeah,
does.
well, yeah, you get jaundice if his liver is failing. Then
Yeah.
it's-
I mean,
You're right.
I mean, is it that? I don't know with kidneys. I'm not sure how kidneys work.
Well, you will go yellow if something happens to your kidneys. Absolutely. Isn't
I
that how
was-
you get jaundice with kidney failure?
No, it's liver.
Is that-
Because
are
your
you-
liver produces too much bilirubin, or underproduces bilirubin. One of the two.
I thought something about dialysis and turning yellow though. None of us are
I
experts.
don't, we're not
in that
doctors,
research.
but yellow is
not.
things that
Yeah.
happen to one of those organs.
Yeah.
When it
Yeah, so-
fails.
Well, this poor guy.
However,
was
some sort
fucked.
of. He's obviously being just torn apart by cancer.
okay, so what are the odds that if there was some sort of radiation incident and the dude was just in a radiation suit and what he thinks he saw isn't really what he saw, but kind of what he saw.
So it's a guy in a silver radiation
Trying to take
suit.
care of some shit, and the dude was just in the zone.
And then that's how he got exposed
You got radiation,
to radiation, and then
burns.
that's how he got cancer from it. God damn it, Chris. You're a fucking genius. You son of a bitch.
I really, but
I agree.
that-
I
that
agree.
I mean, there's a
work.
lot of other
No,
bullshit.
but listen,
That would work. That would work, though.
Listen, I agree that Chris is a genius, but the beef with this is if you're going
Yeah,
to
there's
take
beef.
anything he says with with any bit of veracity and more than a grain of salt, then you have the fact that all right, so this guy is armless or his arms are stuffed
just
in
what I
his
mean.
suit.
There's a lot of other
that he shoots
things.
beams through his eyes
Right.
that are able to burn his hands, and
Yeah.
that he can fucking melt through a fence.
Right.
Like if he just saw a guy in a silver suit walking
Does,
by and had like lights on his helmet or something, and then he got sick of cancer soon after, I'd be like, yeah,
no, I'm saying
this
it's
is
like
some fucked up
he
shit.
was already being irradiated,
So that maybe it
kind
was
of
like
fucking him
fucking
up.
his
That's what I'm saying.
perceptions.
Yes, sort of. Like, so he saw some things, and some things aren't really what was
You know,
there.
I don't know the first thing
I don't
about
either.
what
I'm
happens
just
with
throwing it out
radiation
there.
poisoning. I mean, I've seen, all the horrible threads and the day after stuff, but that still doesn't make me educated in this.
Me
I
either.
don't know if hallucinating is one of the first things you do when you're exposed to
I
radiation.
don't know.
I'm looking it up right now, actually.
Okay, because
I have
that,
no
would that
idea.
would be if that's the case, then he could have just been caught in an accident that they did their best
But I
to
suppose
cover
it's
up.
still going to be in how much you're exposed. I mean, I'm assuming it affects everyone different, sort of.
And also,
but-
you would assume more than him would be affected if there was an actual nuclear accident like a 3 Mile Island type thing, and certainly not Chernobyl level, but even if it was a minor accident, if it was enough to give one guy in his van who's
Right.
just stopping there for a few minutes cancer, then it would almost certainly be enough to give everyone living just outside that region some sort of illness, you'd think.
Possibly. Yeah.
I mean, I can dig it. I can dig that would be an interesting skeptic's perspective. But at this point, I think I've still got to think it's something anomalous because even though I don't know I don't know if it's an alien or a weird fucking robot or who knows. But it seems like it's something bizarre and not with a
It could be.
natural explanation just because of how it looked, what it did with the eye
Yeah.
beams, and then certainly what it did while it
Well, I'm
melted
not
through a
even.
fence.
I mean that whatever it could be, any number of twists in that narrative that I said.
Absolutely. No, I'm just
But
saying
I'm
that's
talking
why I lean
As
away from it.
As a real world, that's really an only kind of explanation you can really have.
That's true. It certainly can't be a prank. That has to be just outruled. Either the guy is lying,
Yeah.
horrible case of the diabetes, and just totally tripped his way through
There's
this.
there's
Yeah.
nothing for like hallucinating as far as radiation exposure or like radiation sickness. There's nothing for hallucinating. There's a ton of obviously terrible side effects. But
Yeah.
nausea and vomiting, diarrhea, headache, fever, dizziness and disorientation, weakness and fatigue,
Well,
hair
disorientation.
loss, bloody vomit and stools, infections, poor wound healing, low blood pressure.
Well, here's the other thing. He didn't have any other
Bummer.
obvious signs of radiation poisoning. His fingers
Yeah.
were burned,
Right.
and he had those dark marks running the length of his fingers for 3 weeks.
Right.
Yeah.
But he didn't have the black stools, the nausea, the hair loss,
No.
all the other, earmarks of radiation poisoning.
But Chris's real world application of this, I think, makes sense.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's what it
But
is.
no, not at all. But just as far as a way to possibly explain what it might be tied
The
to.
only bridge is that
makes
the
sense.
radiation came from the Silver Man.
Right, exactly. So regardless if it's a dude from some sort of fallout, which, like you said, you would suspect if the fallout was that bad that there would be some sort of like further contamination of the area.
I mean, he just lived 5 minutes away, so there were residences
but you know what's
all
weird
around.
too, though, is that every time this guy goes back to the spot, he's experiencing the same symptoms.
Like a flashback that engages him instantly.
Unless there's something at that area that he's sensitive to.
Well, is it a psychic rapport with the creature?
Yeah, or is it something more physical?
Like, you think he gets there, he starts feeling the physical effects, and that makes his mind start to race, so he thinks he's having a psychological sort of connection that's really not manifest.
Maybe.
I mean, it's a possibility. Listen, I've had panic attacks in my life, and I've been in places where I've had panic attacks, especially when I was much younger. And being in that same place
Gives you a
started
panic
triggering
attack.
those
Yeah,
feelings,
totally. Yeah.
and then your mind starts racing. I can see some logic in that.
Yeah.
It just doesn't explain any of the things he saw or the physical reactions, or certainly not the cancer.
Right.
And here's the other thing too: if this thing is radioactive and he's in this region, even though it is worth noting that he walked down the hill next to the nuclear facility, through the fence at the firehouse, and then up into the woods. So apparently, this is a forest inspecting creature.
Mm-hmm.
But does he like crave the energy? Is it like one of those things where, like you used to say about Godzilla, like he, hungers for the nuclear energy and goes to
so
these
is
places.
this thing powered by the nuclear energy?
Did he
Like, sort of
land
like Godzilla,
nearby
yeah.
to get the juice, and that therefore
That
is radioactive?
Sort of to Chris's point, that in that case could definitely cause some adverse reactions with Mr. Ken Edwards.
And would he have gotten that way just by being in proximity of this creature, or was it distinctly the I-beams, whatever the fuck energy that was?
Yeah, the I-beams seem to be the
that blew up his fucking transceiver, his fucking CB radio, and burned his hands and possibly fucking fucked his life.
Okay, well,
we don't fucking know.
Super weird.
Here's the last
weird
thing I'll say about believing Edwards.
Oy.
If it was a hoax, I'm not saying everybody has a deathbed confession, but a lot of people do. And if this was all just some bullshit, you would think that he would not want to fucking die with a lie on his lips being the last thing there.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, totally.
And then, but what's the point? Like, if he never tried to make money off of it, and never was like, I mean, I don't blame people if they want to find a way to make a profit off of a horrible experience or a terrifying experience they had.
Right.
I don't hold it against them, but I can see where it would delegitimize them in the eyes of a lot of people.
Right.
But this guy only suffered.
Yeah.
And he suffered all the ridicule he feared by trying to step forward and do the right thing by saying there's some weird shit here and it's in a really sensitive area and we should be careful.
Right. It sort of harkens back to the Metal Man of Falkville, where like, did this guy really like hoax it? Because he didn't stand to gain. All he did was lose.
Yeah.
Like he had no reason to do it.
Like if either of them were trying to capitalize on it, they fucking suck.
Yeah,
they
It
suck.
doesn't seem like Ken
at
Edwards
exploiting
has. It doesn't. I don't think that Ken Edwards from this report here has any reason to really hoax this.
Yeah, he seems to have a good job. He's got his wife.
It almost sounds. I mean, kind of more to Chris's point too, as far as seeing this person or whatever and some possible radiation. I mean, could he be coming to the end of some form of like a radiation sickness after so many months or possible years of being exposed to it by working there?
Well, I don't know if he worked there. He was.
He was an engineer.
He was a service engineer, which basically means he repairs industrial machines.
Right.
Now, as far as I know, he was just coming home from
a union meeting in Greater Manchester. Okay,
and
that's
lived
my
there.
fault. Right.
Now, here's another interesting thing. Like I say, we're definitely going to, good Lord willing, and I actually am able to talk to some of these people, I would love to be able to do a follow-up pod for our first time. And,
totally.
And be able to span out. One of the things I would like to know is where he worked, what kind of machines he worked with.
Yeah, totally.
If he did get exposed to radiation or other cancerous things,
if that had something to do with it,
like asbestos or who knows what, that, might have, or if he was a chain smoker. I mean, they don't mention. I mean, obviously the man doesn't mind throwing back a whiskey, and who wouldn't after running into the Silverman like that? But
so I personally don't think I have any reason to doubt Ken Edwards as far as what it is.
Oh, that's just impossible
I mean,
to discern.
we
That's what makes
obviously
this
don't
one of
know.
the. It's one of the reasons I love this story from the
No,
first
it's a
moment I
great
read
story.
about it.
It's great. It's an
because
awesome
well,
story.
it's a horrible incident. But it's a fascinating thing because it's 7 foot tall. It lumbers like a kneeless Frankenstein. It's got like pointy little nipple arms, like a fingerless T-Rex, and it's got a big bowling ball head with like laser beam eyes that fucks up your CB and ruins your hands and possibly
Christ,
everything.
It kills your fucking kidneys too.
So it's just, what is this? Did it have nefarious intentions, or is it just
Was
like
it
the
just
way?
passing by?
Yeah.
And just happened to,
Well, for at least a week, because he saw it again.
You saw it
that's
again a
true,
few days later,
So, but I guess it actually was kind of camping out. It was like, hey guys.
And why did it go to the fucking
Camping on the
woods?
wasteland.
Yeah, in the wasteland.
It is
What the
clearly.
fuck that means?
I know.
Yeah, seriously.
He's clearly not a fucking woodland creature. So what the hell? Why the woods? And then he can disappear. He has that. I mean, he can shoot lasers and he can melt through
phases,
fences.
yeah.
So
he phases like vision, yeah.
Which brings us back to the silver fucking surfer.
Yeah, exactly.
Because this clearly
Right,
was
back to the
inspired by
Silver
Jack
Surfer.
Kirby. It's a Jack Kirby horror story.
Yeah, he must have heard him, but like, what? I got an idea for this.
So I guess okay, we're gonna take obviously a hoax or possible radiation sickness off of the table. So we're gonna go with either alien or interdimensional.
I mean, why not? But the fact that there was just a huge flap of UFOs, even though it really would have been so much more convenient if Edward saw the red light descend behind the hill.
And
this
it
thing
showed
walked
up,
over. But you know what? Life is not always that convenient for us. It's not that easy, and sometimes we just have to. We're human beings. We say it all the time. We love patterns.
We look,
We are forcing a pattern. I mean, it's like literally.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's having two unrelated things and forcing them together. I get that, but on the other hand, UFOs are anomalous. A Silverman is sure as fuck anomalous. They're happening at the same time.
Right.
Edwards isn't even hearing the thing that
you gotta
eventually
throw
is
it
seen.
out there.
I mean, it's hard not. You really want it to connect.
Yeah, there's a lot of the stuff though that kind of ties it all together. It's kind of weird. There's a lot of weird little tiny events that all kind of come together and is one. The weird humming.
Yeah.
Bizarre. Totally bizarre. Heard by other people.
Yeah, and
Weird.
seen.
And
The
seen,
people.
yeah. The people.
And then the cigar-shaped UFO. That's the other fucked up thing. Why is there one red glowing thing and one cigar-shaped one?
Yeah.
Right.
And the cigar-shaped one was actually seen, allegedly, over the university nuclear facility, the one, Liverpool and Manchester.
Yep.
So that was seen in that area on that night by other people. So at least that's a tenuous connection.
Can we take time travel off the table?
Never.
No.
Okay.
As far as
just
I'm
checking.
concerned.
I just want to put it out there.
I wouldn't even.
That's
I
for a
wouldn't-
couple of our listeners. I'm thinking of you guys when we're talking about this time travel. Always on the table.
Well, if he's some random
Just saying.
future, if he's
Yeah.
like some
Well, I
future
mean-
nuclear inspector coming back to check out shit.
Yeah, unless there was an
It's like
account
Hans Bricks.
to where the thing said it specifically was not a time travel person, then it's always on the fucking table because
I
there's
won't
no.
tell you what I am, but I'm not from the future or the past.
Yes, I'm from right now.
Not from right now. I'm happening
I'm
as we
totally
speak.
here.
Yeah.
All right, so we got either interdimensional or we have extraterrestrial. We do have some UFO sightings. I really want to go interdimensional, but I have no basis for why I want to do
We
it.
never
so I
do,
can't.
really.
No.
We're just guessing.
It's
Yeah,
fun.
I know.
I mean, can we really rule out demonic entirely? That's another thing, like time travel.
You know what?
I mean, I rarely lean on that. Obviously, that's not my bias ever. But
edgy Rob over here.
no, I'm
with
not edgy. I'm
black
just
candles in his
Yeah, fuck,
shroud. Satan.
yeah. If
Hello,
Anton
Satan.
LaVey ate John Candy, that's who you'd have. Me.
You know,
Yeah, I'm
that's
gonna-
yeah.
I might rule out demons.
Yeah, no.
But can
well,
you ever really rule out demons? I mean, demons.
they
Yeah,
could
but
take
you know
any
what?
form
Yeah,
they
but
want.
demons and aliens and interdimensional shit, we all know that could possibly be all the same shit.
A lot of people believe
Just
it is.
different labels for the same thing.
I don't.
So if that's
but
the
some
case,
people do.
then technically this could be a demon, a demon, as Chris says.
I mean,
Could
he
be
did some evil
anything,
shit.
though.
He did.
Technically,
Not
It-
re- well,
sort of.
well,
unless Ken,
Really?
if Ken had like a
He just
history
walked
of
by,
cancer,
really.
Okay,
was
the
a chain
beams was,
smoker,
I guess, a dick move.
ate asbestos. You know,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, then maybe he was,
asbestos.
walking into the cancer fucking
But
ward
I
to
mean,
begin
that is
with.
kind of one of the angles here, though, is that all these things could be all the same thing, but people just give them different labels. So
it's true.
You know.
But I'm going to say I'm pretty sure extraterrestrial for this one.
Okay.
Mostly
All right. I
because of
respect
the
it.
UFO
I respect
flap,
it.
the fact that he's got super laser eyes, looks like he's either a robot or not enslaved to our gravity because a 7 foot tall, awkwardly kneeless thing walking stooped over down a steep embankment and not falling. That something's got to explain that. Maybe it likes like the jaunt through the rolling hills, but it's like, oh, this fucking fence. I'm not going to climb you.
Yeah.
I
Phase.
will phase through you.
Let me lift my hands and do the incantation.
Yeah, do the
There you
thing.
go. Yeah. All right. So, Chris, what do you think? Rob's going extraterrestrial. What are you gonna do?
Given that it points to that, I mean, that's
Points to extraterrestrial.
more than a classic Christian demon.
So there's no Beelzebub.
Call the Vatican.
Yeah. All right.
Silverman's back.
All right. You know what?
Jesus.
For once, we are all going to be on the same page.
Oh my God.
I am not going to go with interdimensional, though I so goddamn badly fucking want to.
Who's to say the UFOs aren't from another dimension? Why do they have to be from a different part of the
Yeah.
galaxy?
I know.
And it still could be a time
again,
traveler. You just don't know.
But again, we're looking for patterns. So should we start breaking that, looking for patterns?
No, never, because that's how
Shit.
we function.
Thought we were having a whole new way of looking at life.
No.
For all the
no, that would
the
be
asshole
horrible.
patterns that fucking distract people and confuse them and put them on wrong paths, more often than not, if it's done by reasonably bright and rational people, patterns are how you fucking come to positive conclusions that cure diseases, make technological advancements, solve crimes. Patterns are super essential. There's a reason we do it.
Well,
now,
yeah,
we are
absolutely.
aware that you can fall into that trap and make connections that are
I'm saying.
real tenuous.
What if we stop the following of the patterns?
All right, so if we didn't follow patterns, then you can literally just say what? He's a space wizard from the past.
Well, you can say anything.
But the future past, because from somebody else's past, he went into the future, but he's really from our future, but our past future wizard.
Okay, well, let's slow down a little bit. It's
just stupid.
Let's pump our brakes. Let's pump the brakes. I'm going to say extraterrestrial because, again, as far as the whatever sort of experiments are happening, there's literally no information about
But
that.
I'm not ruling out dead extraterrestrial. I love my space ghost
look,
theory.
I love your
right.
dead extraterrestrial. I do. But Chris's explanation,
You're saying
too,
space ghost.
I'm saying extraterrestrial. Chris, you're saying
It's
a
probably
demon?
no.
No.
You're trying to make some. You're
I
trying
know.
to trace the demon
I'm trying to push
somewhere.
out.
I'm the one that clearly
Say
said it's not a
demon.
demon.
It's
No,
true.
but we can
He
edit,
de facto
that
stated
out.
that.
Say demon.
Okay, it's
No,
a rod.
Don't say that. Oh,
It
it's
is
a rod.
It's a
rod. There you
clear
go.
cut case of a rod. If I've ever seen, you know what? Wouldn't it be hilarious if this thing was just an armless species of alien and it had like two pet rods that are constantly attached to its
Yeah.
chest?
Oh,
that are just
it's got
like
two little pets,
like
two little
guard
dogs.
dogs or
Yeah.
navigators.
Nice. I like
Two
that.
rods and an
That's
alien.
cute.
That's what it is.
Two rods and an alien. That's cute.
Just makes sense. Plus, it's our new sitcom. It's gonna
Is
be
there
great.
is there like any? Is this surrounded by orbs? I mean, dust. Is it surrounded by dust by any chance?
Who knows?
There's gonna be actually two rods or two dudes named Rod. like Rod Stewart and like
Oh,
Rod
Serling.
Serling. Yeah.
like Roddy McDowell.
Oh, I do like Roddy.
Rowdy
He was great in
Piper?
Fright Night.
Nah,
Okay,
it's Rowdy.
we're just
It's not
like
Rod.
dead people named Rod.
Yeah.
Rodney Dangerfield?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that would work.
I think we're done with this.
I think we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Rod Stewart is not dead.
No, he's like the only one you mentioned who wasn't
Okay.
dead. I
Good.
think
So he's alive and he is English. Ah.
that's why I said Rod Stewart.
Where was
So it's-
Rod
where was
Stewart
Rod
on the
Stewart?
night of the
Yeah.
summer?
May 12th, 1978.
Well,
that
I think
son of a
they
bitch.
were, I think they were all probably alive then, though. So it could have been any of the Rods.
Shit, Chris brings up an excellent point again.
The legacy
No, what if
on.
it all revolves around Rod Stewart and his weird wispy singing? Maggie, I shouldn't have. Yeah, Chris can do it. Do it, Chris,
That's
quick.
not- I just did.
Maybe the
I
Silverman
can't-
is just a big
Sing
fan.
me some more Rod Stewart,
Came
Chris,
down
quick.
to get tickets.
I know. I can know.
When I was a kid, I used to get Rod Stewart confused with Simply Red.
Wow.
I have no idea.
That's odd.
My father had both tapes. I played them both and got them both confused because I was a dumb child.
Stewart.
It happens.
You're
Here's to
right.
being stupid.
Hey, you're in good
And a
company.
kid. All right. You know what, Rob? I'm going to say excellent article. This might be one of my favorite ones thus far.
Yeah,
this
it's
has
crazy.
so much to it.
Yeah, it's fucked.
It's got a ton of shit to it. And thank you. Thank you
Oh,
very much.
shit.
It was excellent.
You're welcome.
Good work on the research.
Good job, treasure.
Yeah. Way to go, National
I'll
Treasure.
never live it
You
down.
know what, though, Christopher, you came through with the real world explanation. Didn't necessarily
Not real,
pan out, but you know what? I appreciate it because I went to interdimensional
You did.
immediately, and that's why I need you guys here to balance me, and that's why this works.
It's true.
Because if I had my druthers, everything would be interdimensional.
But
it's
you're
all
the
a big
force
giant
that
Howard
propels
fucking
this
duck.
forward. None of this would be happening without you, buddy.
Exactly.
Mutual affection
see,
league.
Friendship prevails.
Oh, as always.
So you know what? Get a hold of us. Let us know what you think about the Silverman sightings and this whole incident and what happened. Rob, we're going to do some follow up with some.
Absolutely. I really, really hope I'm able to get in contact. And, by the way, if anyone happens to hear this because they're familiar with this case for some reason, so they listen to this podcast, they're hearing this part, please contact us.
Yeah, totally.
Because this is one I feel like we can actually have some really tangible connections to and maybe find out at least more information. I mean, I don't expect to get the answers. Christ, in something
I don't
like
think
this,
we're
no.
ever going to have the answers on
but
this. But any more information is
more
great.
information is always better, and if we can establish a few things and find out, even if we can fill in just a few of the gaps, I would be delighted.
That'd be great. All right, cool. So, thanks for joining us for the Kryptonaut podcast. Be sure to follow us on the social medias. We are on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. Be sure to rate and review the show on the iTunes and the Apple Podcasts app. It is greatly appreciated, and it helps the show grow.
Sure as heck does.
Grow with us.
Closing thoughts?
If you see a Silverman, don't talk about it.
No.
Just take off. Don't say anything because
Turn around
it
immediately.
never goes well.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you stop to
Fair.
look at it, it will look at you, and then you're fucked. First off, your sweet, sweet radio is done.
Yep. Shot.
Your knuckles, well, they're going to be uncomfortable for weeks,
Yeah.
and then the death will be imminent and horrible.
Yeah.
So turn around, but Chris is absolutely right. After you've turned around and not had to face its horrible, horrible gaze, don't say a word to anybody.
Yeah, just don't.
Because that's why I called the article "The Curse of the Silver Man," because that motherfucker is accursed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Stay away from curses.
Poor Ken.
Stay away from,
Poor Ken.
Ken Edwards. Stay away from the Silverman. And
Stay gold.
talk to you soon. You're really pony boy. Really? Stay gold.
Silverman, stay gold.